I do.
They were both medics that I knew. One of them I'd known for a long time. She'd been a medic with us for a long time. And she's the one who was kind of badly injured. And I've gone giving some talks about this at various places, a little bit about our experience doing kind of literature. Plus, we did a survey. I did a survey of other places to kind of look at practices and talk a little bit about what they think their real incidence of violence is, which of course is a lot higher than what's really being reported. And these things we're still struggling with, no question. But it's interesting when we went through our process. We kind of got to your program, and that was, I'll tell you, our chief, who's had his own issues over the years, but is a great guy, Sean Larkins, always credits the DT4EMS program anytime he talks about what's happening in our department as a real step forward. And his comment is that it really taught people who didn't really know how to talk to other people how to do that.
Well, and first of all, I'm humbled and honored. The funny backstory on a lot of this is that I was just a street medic and a street cop, and just happened to be a martial artist. So it's really all I know is the frontline people. And like many of the providers that you supervise, we have some form of ADD. And so I wanted to create a program the way I always wanted to attend a program. So if like the scholared people look at our class and they come in, they're like, oh, it kind of takes them back for a moment, because it's very animated. It's very, we want it to be anyway, and we want it to really kind of move forward. And I will tell you, it's been very difficult to try and allow, others to begin to, try and carry the message, because it was so important to me, after my carjacking. But we'll get back to that in just a moment. But I was most certainly extremely frustrated, but I was also very aware when your staff was attacked, because it was a short time around that same time was I want to say San Diego one was also stabbed. But even before that, several years ago, I was actually teaching a class, and I could see this guy in the back of the room, and he had this huge scar that went all the way up and down his face. And like me, he's pale skinned, so there's no, denying what he's feeling or what's going on. And so I could see him at the back of the room. And this is a place that had, the youngest, I want to say, had probably 10 years of experience as I was presenting. And on a break, because once we finally let people begin to discuss the subject as it really is, and you show them that, they're not going to be shamed and they're not going to be shut up, and that we actually give a darn, the stories were just, they'll break your heart. Well, anyway, so on a break, he begins to tell me what happened. And if you see the way our program lays out, we've designed it because we know people are going to enter in sitting there like this, going, "That's a bunch of crap. I don't need it. I've been on the streets forever, and I'm a ninja." And once we chip away at all, they all start going, "Oh my gosh!" And then we're really kind of, in a 2-day class, can only give them, what to practice. But then if you look on social media, as you and I have now become Facebook friends and connected there, you will see that I'm always posting some form of a tip, some form of awareness thing, so that it can constantly be built on, and hopefully they do it on their own. But anyway, back to that fella. So he starts telling me that he was a former policeman. So of course, at that time, I was still a full-time policeman working part-time on the ambulance. And he says, he said, we get a call. He's now switched from being a policeman to being a paramedic, as so many of us have. And he said it was a behavioral. So he goes in, and the girl is like 18 years old. And he said, she's just a doll. He said, my brain said, it's important what your brain says. But he goes, my brain says, man, she looks like my daughter. So he goes over and he puts his hand on her shoulder. And as he begins to introduce himself and say, hi, my name is, and before he can get any more out, she kicks him in the testicles, and he bends forward just like any man would and cups his testicles. He said in a split second, he goes, my mind said she's trying to cut my effing throat. So he brings his hands from his crotch just to do the universal choking sign. At that exact moment, her hand bounces off of his and opens him up all the way through here. And so, I was angry because I went, I know more of these stories than any other person on the flipping planet, because I was investigating them while I was still being made fun of, and I've never heard your story. And, it's just, it's even yours, your crew did not make national news. There's only been 2 that were ever national news, and the doctor that was shot in Johns Hopkins in 2010 and the West Webster firefighters in 2012, although there were 2 very similar incidents that occurred just like that in Missouri, where they had set a fire lure the responders and begin to shoot the responders as they arrived. Mary Seymour was one that was in Kansas City. She lived. But Ryan Hummertz was in St. Louis, and actually in Maplewood, which is very upscale suburb. He was shot and killed as soon as he got off the truck. But anyway, my point is that you were 100% correct that it's grossly underreported. And as a matter of fact, I've shared several videos recently where I've done it for years. I get in a room and I ask people after I've defined what is versus what is not a criminal assault, meaning that the 80-year-old CVA or hypoxic, hypovolemic, whatever you want to say, the true patient, the one that needs us.
Right, the sickle, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a patient. And what's funny is all of our people know the difference. But my point is I switch over and I go versus the criminal aggressor, meaning the person that's high or drunk, tells you that they're going to criminally assault you and then tries to, whether it be by urine, spit, slap, choke, grab, push, whatever. And so we contrast them. Therefore, they know the difference between one versus the other now. And then I say, so how many of you have ever been, criminally assaulted on the job? Get 80 to 100% of the room to raise their hand and admit the fact they've been criminally assaulted. And then I go, all right, guys, everybody look around. And so it can be a room of 6 people or 600 people. And I'll go, so look around. And I said, if you reported that criminal assault, leave your hand up. And only 2 to 3% of a room ever leaves their hand up. So that's normally when I get administrators who are sitting in the room to look around and go, oh my God, I had no idea. But right. It's culture. And we've got the answer. I can tell you the answer. But it's getting people like yourself who have that ear. You know what I mean? Because they won't listen to me. I'm a nobody. Until they sit with me, and then they, if I can get the first 4 hours with anyone to sit in a program, whether it be a policeman, a paramedic, an EMT, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, a judge, whatever, once I chip away at the lie and we reveal the truth, then they go, oh my goodness, we had no idea. So it's people like you that are going to really make a difference, Doc. I hope you know that.
Okay, I hope so, because it's, I think all of us who work in the emergency department have also had the same experience.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks to the ENA, they were the ones that their people went marching, you know what I mean, on all the state capitals that really helped, get laws and awareness. However, I'm sure that you're completely aware that penalty doesn't offer protection, right? It just simply proves there's a problem.
Yeah.
No person ever that was interviewed by, and because of course a lot of my studies had to come through law enforcement, because we were the only ones studying healthcare, but not one person who ever killed a cop said he was worried about the death penalty, and doing so in those states that had the death penalty.
Yeah, exactly. They're not deterred.
So, but it's very interesting because I got to meet several of the people, not on the first go around, but on the second go around when I came up to do an advanced trainer with some of your folks, which of course are super busy. And I met some really, really neat people up there. But, now I'll shut up for a second and let you kind of guide me as to any questions or, anything that you might have, because unfortunately I'm like a pitcher and I get on this subject and I'll talk to you till next week.
Yeah. Okay. No, but that's good. I'd like to know more about just like how the program. I think getting a program started, no matter what you're trying to teach, is really hard. Like, how did you do that? I mean, you obviously it's fairly successful, it seems right now. I think obviously more people need to be doing things like this, but how'd you get it started? That just seems like such a barrier sometimes.
It really is a huge barrier. And before I go too far, the first 10 years, I was literally ridiculed by peers, both in law enforcement and in EMS. I mean, to give you a nugget of how rough it's been. So back in 2004, I can give you one specific because these things broke my heart. But in 2004, there were several chokes that occurred back to back to back, meaning, reach down and grab the provider either one or with 2 hands. So I took my time. Without anything else, I took my time and put together a PDF and said, look, this is what leads up to it. This is the easy ways to escape it and blah, 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 because you have to give people, sometimes a patient can be confused and grab you the exact same way that a criminal aggressor could. So we're in a unique environment. With that said, I put together this piece by piece PDF and I threw it out there. Immediately, a keyboard warrior jumps on there and goes, nobody's ever attacked a healthcare provider like that. And so I was like, okay. So I went to my assault on staff logs, pulled those 3 recent ones that have occurred within literally days of one another, and posted them. He immediately jumps right back on and says, well, now you're just being a fearmonger. And so it's like, you face such a battle because, first of all, it is an ungodly problem, but nobody wants to listen. So how it got started was, I started my EMS crew in 1990 and became a medic in 92, EMS career in 1990 and became a medic in 92 in South Florida. And then in 1994, I moved to Missouri. there's a big reason as to why I ended up choosing healthcare over the law enforcement at first, which was from the time I was little. I always wanted to be a policeman. From the time I was 5 years old, I knew that was what I wanted to do. But when I was 13, my father was electrocuted at work. And I'm the one that dialed 911. And so the crew came in and not only took care of my father, but one actually took enough time to put his hand on my shoulder and say, hey, look, you need to do this, 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 and this. We're going to give your dad the best care we can, so on and so forth. And of course, at 13 years old, I was scared to death, right?
Sure, of course.
But I wanted to be that guy, meaning that it made such an impact on me in my moments of, despair of not knowing what to do. I'm watching my dad, pale, cool, and diaphoretic, not understanding what I was seeing at the moment. And so that's why I went on to EMS, to pay back the powers that be, so to speak. And I ended up going to work for the very service that my dad was picked up by. So flash forward, moved to Missouri. I didn't want to raise my kids in the urban environment. And so in January of 1995, I became a full-time policeman. Well, I'm now a martial artist and, doing all that other stuff, and law enforcement DT instructor. And then I'm like, people were always asking me at the ambulance base, because they knew I was a cop, they knew I was a martial artist, and go, hey, if somebody grabs you like this, how do you get out of it? Or if this happens, what do you do? And so then I would show them something. Well, after enough times, I went, yeah, guys, but there's so much more to it than that. So I created the actual initial program that was approved for CEUs in 1997. So I created it in 96, started teaching it in 1997. Flash forward, it's been a struggle ever since, and it's really been that the idea, first of all, of self-defense and the definition of what is or what is not self-defense, and then what is or what is not a patient, is the reason that it's so difficult. Because the only media coverage that really gets out there is when somebody's hurt bad. And so meaning that literally one per every 697,000 assaults or whatever, I'm just throwing that out there, but one makes the news versus all those that don't. Otherwise, I could 80 to 100% of the room to answer or admit they've been assaulted, but only 2 to 3% ever turned it in. However, every one of those assaults, although not life-threatening, is most certainly life-changing. I'll guarantee you that. Well, so flashing forward, even in my last little bit in law enforcement, so the NAEMT safety course back in, I want to say it was 2009, asked me to write several sections, in which I did. And to show how much of a conflict it really was, or still is, the officers I had plenty of vacation time, and for the first rollout, they wouldn't let me take off to go and teach there at Cape Cod for the original, safety course. And so I've had now over the years, several people in classes that I've taught went, man, we missed the boat. That they were actually part of the initial group with that safety course, and went, oof, we didn't do this right, or we said this wrong, or this wasn't what you actually meant. My point being is, of course, anytime you get further from a source, the more diluted anything becomes. But,
right.
It's still the struggle that we face. Number one is that you can show them, and I'm going to have to be careful because I get very animated sometimes and very angry, but here's what I get. I can sit there and show 20 years worth of studies that have been done by, and that's actually 20 years worth. I can show 20 years worth of studies, whether it be the NAEMT, the ENA, this state did one, that state did one, this group did one, all these people, I can show 20 years worth of studies. And what people will do is showing violence is an epidemic. And that's even with numbers being underreported like they are. And somebody look at me and go, well, we would like a more recent, and you go, I can give you, look around your room, you know what I mean? And I go, just look at it. And so that's the first part, is that the admin are more often worried about training for Ebola or purchasing a power cot to prevent back injuries, yet everything still goes back to violence being the leading cause of injury and lost work time right now in healthcare. And it always has been. It was just being turned in on the OSHA 300 log as a sprain or a soft tissue or a back injury, but it was actually came from violence. And it's like when you see that big of a picture and you really want to grab them and shake the tree and go, oh, it's not important to you until it's important to you, nothing is. There's no t-shirt. I have tried everything. I mean, everything to raise awareness. And since my inbox is riddled with messages that start off with, hey, Kip, I need to tell you something, but please don't tell anybody. And that's how it starts. And then the next thing you know, knee deep in someone else's heartbreak because they feel they have nowhere else they can turn. So they're shamed into silence. It is what has caused much of the culture to become very jaded. And to throw that out there is to go for years, 4 years, we've been saying, the 14 gauge in the back of somebody's hand is no different than a waiter spitting in your food. But then to equate it, and of course, don't incriminate anybody. But my question is, have you ever heard of a doctor snowing and intubating someone because he was a drunk asshole in an ER? So what would happen if a jury or a judge or, even law enforcement, so you're using a drug punitively, that's the same. It's the same as spitting in the food. It's the same as the 14 gauge in the back of the hand. And so when you get to the root, so when we go back to, here they are saying that we're teaching them to talk to somebody, all I'm asking them to do is to remember they're neutral, or supposed to be. Since 1864 was when they first put it on paper, but even back in the days in the medieval time, the bannermen, who was the medical people, were not supposed to be killed, because they would treat either side. Now we're being lumped with law enforcement. And so, it's been a heartbreak, and it's only right now. I've been doing this over 20 years, and it's just right now starting to even take hold. And I mean, we literally trained less than 1% of, EMS and nursing in the country, even though we have former law enforcement, black belts of every martial arts discipline, former PJs, former special forces, former top 10 UFC fighter, who are all now in nursing, EMS, fire, all teaching for us, but that still falls on deaf ears because they're going to go, how do we know your stuff works? Well, ask some of the people that have trained with us, look at the people that are taking it, and nothing is perfect. And if anybody, it's like, you, doc, when you were first, in medical school, regardless of the subject, you weren't good at it the first day you were taught it. It took original training and then your choice to practice or not. So, we've researched the why, we've researched the how, and then the, what to do about it. And it boils down so much, man, so much to the provider understanding how much of a situation they truly can or can't control. And we say things like, verbal de-escalation is a lie. It's a myth. It's impossible. De-escalation in itself is a myth. The only person, and the reason for that is it needs to be escalation control, because the only person I can ever control is me. And when we start showing people how they have thrown their people into corners, meaning the NAEMSP. So when, man, it may have even been 09 itself. It was either 08, 09, something like that. And I want to say Dr. Kupas up in Pennsylvania was the chair at the time, and they sent out or the president. Are you familiar with him by chance? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So I get made aware of it. And so I open it up. And of course, my end goal has always been, the provider safety and satisfaction, which automatically equals patient safety and satisfaction, which equals the service staying out of trouble. So I didn't know that originally, but that's how it is really, expanded. So I'm reading it and I went, okay, so you have now put out a position paper that says it takes 5 people to medically restrain a patient. And so I do an entire section just on restraint math where I show what the problem is that nationwide, doc, nationwide, I get the provider to show me they've had 0 to 4 hours in their entire career on restraint training. And yet restraints are the #1 incident in which a criminal assault occurs, either toward providers or providers are doing a criminal assault on someone else. So, and I go, look, and here's why. And so when we do the whole thing on restraint math, I show that the reason goes back to what is or what isn't a patient. We're supposed to be restraining patients. But textbooks, what they do, and then that digresses me into a whole other thing where I've had another doctor, a PhD, who helps proof the textbooks, reached out to them and said, hey guys, you're still missing the boat. This is recent, just now. I can show you the email because he did our manual. It's the same guy, volunteered. He's an MD, but he's also a PhD. And he reached out to the textbook writers and publishers of the books and said, look, you're still missing it. Violence is a problem. You need to talk to this guy. Nothing. Cricket, cricket, cricket. And you can't get them to listen. So it goes back to what is or what isn't a patient, first of all. Then what can I or can I not control? Because no one man can be controlled by another unless he wants you to, which is why police officers have pepper spray, taser, baton, and pain compliance. And not only that, they have a law that says I can take custody. It's funny because every cop that ever takes our class with the crews is able to validate everything that I'm saying. So here you've got the #1 incident, which is violent criminal assaults occurring during restraints, a police officer's entire police academy, when you think about it. Because when I put the cop on the hot seat, I go, tell me it's not true. when not to place a person in handcuffs, which means did they meet the elements of a crime or not? What levels, meaning your assault or force levels, and then they have all these other tools to plug in to the different variables in order to say a person either has or hasn't met the elements to be put in handcuffs and have custody taken of them. So their entire police academy, meaning the laws, the use of force, I mean, everything. So, excuse me. Healthcare gets 0 to 4, but yet healthcare hears hospital with them or jail with me. And so we are literally having to address a bazillion things in 16 hours.
The areas that I always tell people is, so the police had all that experience, and then what do they often do? They bring the patient to the emergency department and hand them to us.
That's right. Because, and here's why. We helped create the monster. And this is what I mean. This is great that you and I are getting a chance to talk, but you will help put some order to it. So here's what occurs. So the drunk man, who we have to back it all the way up. We've been, and again, not because I wanted to, it's just that's why I was obsessed, is because once I was attacked, everything changed because nobody cared. If I'd have been attacked in my patrol car the same way I was in the ambulance, every news station would have picked it up. Oh my God, policeman has to take control of his police car after somebody carjacks it. Happened in an ambulance, made 7A at Jefferson City's newspaper in 2 sentences. And there was me, a little old lady, and her daughter that were being kidnapped at the time. It was bad. Anyway, now I've met people whose stories are a bazillion times worse than mine. So here's how we created the monster. The police, fearing excited delirium that we've been teaching about in our program since 1997, okay, that police officers are training, we're supposed to take custody, right? And then the paramedics or EMS are immediately then going to give this guy some sort of a medicine and knock him down so this person may live. Fearing in custody death, they have been taught to call law enforcement early. Okay, I still don't have a problem. We're still golden. However, EMS in these places have had 0 training on what ED is, what it looks like, so on and so forth, have bad things occur because they then feel compelled to maintain custody of someone that's actually in the custody of law enforcement. And so when the police officer gives the intoxicated person who has no even remote possibility of dying because they're intoxicated, they do the whole hospital them or jail with me, which as a policeman, I can assure you was designed and taught in the police academy for that person who is sick or injured, who the paramedics look to the police officer and going, please, this person needs to go to the hospital or they're going to die. The officer is supposed to then look at the person and go, look, you can either go to the hospital with them or I'm going to take you, book you, and then take you on to the hospital anyway because I can't let you go because you're going to die. Instead, we blanketed this out and said, if a person is a danger to themselves or others, you can put restraints on them. And you go, okay, well, here you go. Let's say I'm in uniform, a paramedic uniform. I go to a restroom in a convenience store. I step out of the restroom in uniform. I see a guy begin to hack up everybody with a machete and rob in the store. Is this due to danger to others? Well, the answer then, yeah. So therefore, go put him in soft restraints. So see, I know that sounds stupid right now, but when you look at the big scale of things, I'm telling you, your people are injured to a degree that is absolutely insane because nobody has said, back up for just a minute, am I safe? Is this my responsibility? So here's how the monster got created. So first of all, the officer then has to hold on to the drunk on one side. The paramedic then holds on to the drunk on the other, just because he's mimicking what the cop is doing. The cop then looks over at the medic and goes, oh, you must be trained like us. The person who's being held on to looks at the policeman, looks there at the medic and goes, oh, these people are the same. The entire public watching this incident then goes, oh, those guys are the same. And so what I have found is compelled, the provider feels compelled to maintain custody of someone that they didn't need to. And so the places that have followed our advice, because again, we've proven it, time and time and time again, our success stories are somebody recognized something the moment before it happened rather than they use some physical technique to, defend themselves, which is good because then that means we've, done our job. But so the monster is partly our problem. The next problem of it is, let's say you've had an officer that's trained with us somewhere or who's read some of my social media, knows that violence against healthcare is actually worse than the violence against the police officer. So when they see it, they show up, something happens, and then the police officer goes, hey, do you want to press charges? The medic, being embarrassed or whatever, is like, no, that's okay. And then so the cops have started to go, well, why are we going to ask? Y'all ain't going to follow up with it when the court time comes. And so we've helped perpetuate the problem as it is. And so what me and my cadre have been attempting to do is we have to first educate the healthcare providers. Then we've branched out and been educating the law enforcement. Then we've been doing the public. And then we're trying to do, just get everybody on the same page. So that's what has been such a barrier, is because we may get a person who comes in and takes the program and say they become a trainer, and they go back with this wealth of knowledge, and they're going, you are not going to believe, this, and we've got to get to going, guys. We have, because they each see something, that they go, oh, this is important at our house right now. They go back and it meets a wall, because they go, well, Ebola, we got to get everybody trained up for Ebola. Okay. All right. So how many people got sick in the United States from Ebola? I'm not saying the training isn't important. I'm just trying to.
I've had this discussion a million times about that exact issue.
And so violence, number one, man, number one, not to mention, so our attacks, but then those people that are using excessive force. And it's only because they become jaded. Why? Culture. You've told them, not you, but we have told them, hey, brother, it's just part of the job. Suck it up or go find another. And you're talking to some of the most amazing flipping people on the planet, people that have given their lives, I mean, literally, to helping complete strangers. And what we've done is made a culture that says, I'm supposed to care more about that stranger than my own partner or even myself. You know what? In some aspects, that's true. But yet, when you look at it, and again, put it into perspective, you don't ask your people to start IVs unsafe. You're a doctor. You've been around long enough before we had protective casts, before everything was flipping needles, right? And so, you look at it today and go, look at the gazillion dollars we're spending so that somebody doesn't get needle stuck. Your people have to take bloodborne pathogens every year. I guarantee you, I am smart enough, as is every single person I've spoken to, that if they were an EMT, a paramedic, or anything above, they knew if that shit was wet and sticky and it came out of that person, I don't want it in me. Okay. And it's like, but yet we're going to browbeat them with that. Why? Because OSHA said, you know what? You need to. And so violence is still the biggest one. And I can only get OSHA. There's a lot of stuff on the backside, but I can still only get OSHA right now to make violence. Well, it's a recommendation. We should, really. And so anyway, I have to shut up again or I'll keep going. But this is the scope. It's huge. And it just keeps going, and it's like an onion. And every time you peel it back a piece, it's even worse. And the thing was, Doc, is that the first 10 years I was teaching wrong. I was teaching in healthcare users martial arts, or I was teaching them police style stuff. And I got deeper and deeper into it. I'm going, man, it still isn't, something's still not getting it. And so once I really researched what the problem was, then I went, oh my gosh, because I've been putting, like everybody else, when they think they're doing good, myself included, what we were really doing was, putting a Band-Aid on an amputation, because you were, trying to get to the, curing the cancer now. But once they've already got it, when we had the easy enough to go, look, don't do this first and you're not going to get cancer. And so once we really broke it down, and again, not just through one time, it's not just me here. This is by me talking to a bazillion people. And then them coming up with the same thing when they go back and teach their people or they talk to their people, they're shocked, But anyway, so we've helped create the monster as it is today. And the number one thing it all goes back to, no matter what. And I'm telling you what, people will cuss me. They will jump up and down. I try to share some stuff on social media and get people that have never taken our program. You can't even get them to listen to a 3-minute clip, much less an hour-long discussion with people where we're discussing this stuff reasonably and appropriately, everything from, how we look all the way to lethal force. I mean, we cover it all. And it's like, but they think they know everything. Why? Because they got a keyboard, they got Google, and they're ninjas. So it is what it is. But
so you mentioned like kind of getting to the focus on escalation control, right? Because that's something that clearly is a challenge even when people learn it sometimes, and certainly some of my EMS folks and some of the physicians I work with, that's what they really need to learn, is that escalation control.
Because we control more of it than what we think we do. And
yeah,
we, and again, until I investigated it, it's like, I'm like, holy crap, man, how did I miss this? But the big scheme of things, again, so now in the back of your mind, you have people compelled to hold on to someone, number one, that they shouldn't have. So see, you've already got them entering into a bad situation. And see what I mean by what my brain did? So Dr. Cooper said it takes 5 people to medically restrain a patient. I then reached out to Dr. Kupas and I said, hey, doc, I said, first of all, when have we ever had 5 people similarly trained in the back of an ambulance? And I said,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You've now opened us up to legalities, because let's say they hire me. Let's say an employee or of yours, which of course this is, discussion in a different realm here. But let's say someone hires me because their employee injured someone. And the very first thing that happens is I begin to talk to their attorney and I go, okay, here you go. Let's talk to them about restraints. The injury occurred during a restraint situation, yada, yada, yada. I would tell them all this information. The NAEMSP says it takes 5 people to medically restrain a patient, yet you and your staff have had 0 to 4 hours in your 15 years worth of healthcare experience. But the 2 of you in the back of an ambulance decided that you were smarter not only than your doctor, but that this entire panel of doctors that are medical directors of places all over. And so you guys just decided to do that there. And so I was trying to explain that to him, and he's like, oh, well, that's interesting. That was it. And I'm like, you see, I don't have it. It's because I'm a no one. If I would have spent this many hours, researching this subject and I spent it on ACLS, or I spent it on PALS or anything, then I would be somebody. But because I researched the subject that, first of all, they want to refuse to acknowledge the existence of, and then go, well, this is the way it's always been, until it affects them personally. Then, do they even start to look? But then they'll do things like, well, we'll bring our local SWAT team in and have them teach our people. And you go, that's part of the problem. Our guys aren't SWAT people, or we'll bring our local guy in who will teach, groin kicks and eye gouges. Again, maybe reasonable, but way up here. What about all the rest of the stuff? And the funny thing is, man, I even had fire chiefs who they're tough guy. I mean, literally sent me a deal saying this class paid for itself. And you don't have to include me in this. This is for me and you. But the fire chief sends me a deal because literally the day after the guy took the class, it was a firefighter known as one of their resident badasses. And so the day after he takes the class, they get called, and the dude, they get there, and the fire guy gets there, and this guy shoves him. And the fire guy backs up, and he's like, oh, man, easy. And the guy shoves him again. Get off my effing property, blah, blah, blah. And so it's actually criminal assault. The fireman's put his hands up, and he said, sir, that's twice. And he's like, what have you talking about? He's like, that's how many times you've assaulted me. I'm asking you to stop. And so the reason that the chief sent me this deal was because as well as I do, that the media would say, firefighter beats up man on scene, firefighter. Right. It would not have been what really occurs. And so we try to teach that portion. Well, anyway, that fire chief said the class paid for itself that day because that dude the day before would have beat the ass out of this guy,
Right.
And
Paul got those people.
Yeah. And the thing is that here's the piece that people aren't considering, is that whether you want to address it or not, it's going on. And it's not until something bad happens, either the person really gets hurt or somebody captures it on social media and they share it and they twist it however it wants to be twisted, then it comes back and it haunts them. But now it's $1 bazillion. Denver's been clients of mine since 2010. They all had to sign a non-disclosure on the case where the paramedic got sentenced to 12 years for beating the guy up in the back of an ambulance. And that was a lot to do with unofficial policy, meaning EMS in Denver was looked at by the law enforcement as backup. Man, they're rolling and we're going to, and so because of that culture, they got hemmed up. Yeah. And the dude, he beat the ass out of this guy and served a 12-year prison sentence, where others have been arrested, lost their job for various different reasons. But anyway, many of them have been excessive force. But then now we have another problem, which is I've interviewed people, written multiple opinion letters for attorneys to try to get a person either their license and or their job back for defending themselves reasonably against a criminal on the job, and the state or the employer going, you're fired, or we're taking your license, you're a hazard to the public. And you're looking at this, it's a thing of trying to give your people critical thinking skills. That's all I'm doing. It's all I'm asking to do is to say, you've given, a paramedic student has to tell this preceptor, his or her preceptor, why he wants to start an IV or she wants to start an IV before the preceptor allows them. Why? They need to hear what's your critical thinking skill behind why, which solution, which needle, what are you going to do? So we'll do that. But yet one of the most high liability subjects, which is violence, occurring more than anything else, more than back injuries, more than needle sticks, more than anything else, more than driving accidents. Do your people now have to wear the fancy yellow reflective vest, ANSI vest, but yet have 80 to 100% of your people been run over on the road? They've answered that as, of course not, because you wouldn't have any employees left. But by God, they got to wear that vest. this is, all I'm asking for is a reasonable discussion to give people the opportunity to be critical thinkers. And before I forget this, and I promise to shut up, if we get people brand new in school, the first 4 hours of our program is literally like in an hour, because we don't have to chip away anything, because those brand new EMT or medic students who've not been on the road yet are going, well, of course, if a drunk guy punches me in the throat, I'm calling the police. Well, of course, if someone spits on me and tells me they're going to kill me, I'm calling the police. You give us that same person 6 months after they've been on the road, it takes us 4 hours to chip away at the armor to get them to go, oh my gosh, what is, and it's all culture. It goes back to what is versus what isn't a patient, what can or what can I not control, when should I be trying to control it, and stuff like that. Because now our people are compelled to do things that are dangerous. And what I share is I say, look, the difference between bravery and stupidity, or bravery and recklessness, is an extremely thin line. The only reason you called me brave was because I lived. If I would have died doing something that I was compelled to do, you called me an idiot. You see? And
yeah, then yeah.
And it's like the New York EMT, that just broke my freaking heart. And of course, I've been talking to the guys that, were directly, across the water from, because in Jersey City, I've got, obviously our clients, but not with that, they're friends. And man, they were just ate up, horribly over that. And I'm not saying anything other than sometimes, because mine was a carjacking. There was another carjacking right around that time. There's multiple stolen ambulances. We've given the free tips of, look, here's how you can secure your station, secure your ambulance on the cheap. You don't even have to talk to me. Check this list out and do it. Up to you. But anyway, the point is that if somebody could have possibly said, hey, you know what? Whoa, put the brakes on. And then here's where your argument will come in. You ready? They'll be like, well, but her partner's still in the truck. And I go, okay, hold on. Hear me out, guys. All I'm asking you to do is to be reasonable and not be compelled to do something because you're wearing a uniform. For years, because of what had happened in like West Webster and in St. Louis and Kansas City, and there's been others, like one was in Arkansas, but the point was,
I grew up in Rochester, actually. My dad lived in Webster during that whole episode.
Oh, okay. So that's unique or interesting. Well, don't forget to mention a couple of things about up there too, because Mark Davis and a few other things that occurred in New York. And then there's a hospital there, that Brookdale or Brookhaven got fined for violence. Finally, one of the first few places. But anyway, so one of the examples that we use in class, because again, I have to chip away at armor, and people immediately go, well, my partner's still in that truck. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna do this. And I say, okay, hold on, guys. Let me change the perspective. We're talking about life or death, one moment in time, and the ability to make a decision that is reasonable. So here we go. Let's say you and I have been dispatched to a structure fire, and we're just the standby unit. I step off or out of the truck, out of the passenger side, and I open up the side compartment door to get, whatever, because we hang out here with the fire guys while we're at the structure standby. And all of a sudden, I catch a bullet in the chest and I'm laying on the ground. Now I'm screaming for you to come get me. Help me, help me. Look, our kids go to, college together. We go to church together. Our families are just these close friends. I'm screaming for you to come get me. Come get me. Help me. I'm dying out here. What do you do? Now, up until recently, when I say recently, I mean within the last month or two, I can always get the majority of the class to go, well, I'm coming to him. And then I go, bang, now you're shot. Who's next? Because what does a sniper want? More bodies, right? Granted, that's rare and it's the extreme, but I want you to tell me, what is the flipping difference of that versus the person that's carjacked the truck that you're trying to now get back in control of? Again, I don't know all the details. I'm just trying to show it as an example that it was just as deadly. I can show you a gazillion other things where people didn't die, but had fractures, parts of their ear tore off, broken ribs, stabbed 105 times on Thanksgiving, but hell, that doesn't make the news. How does it? Anyway, so my point being is I try to get them to say, look, if you do or you don't, that's on you. As long as what you do, you're not feeling compelled to do something that you have zero training for, and you're only doing based upon emotion. Because a simple pause, that moment in time, is what it takes for me to process whatever information is being, filtered to me at a moment's notice. And so when we show people the truth, meaning what the real problem is, and then the real truth of self-defense and the physical application, the reason you're seeing a lot of the response that you are is because, remember I said I was training them wrong for so long, is that when we attack in the end of the class, we teach them the difference between winning a fight and winning in self-defense. Because oftentimes there's no way you're going to beat our guy in fist suit. I mean, he feels no pain. So he is that higher drunk individual that your pain compliance stuff that cops would be teaching, he doesn't feel pain anyway. So why are you trying to use pain? The other thing is the only way I could get that person under some form of control would be so deadly that it's been removed from law enforcement use except for deadly force encounters. And then you have even like, you know, the one where like the guy was bit and it ripped him all, you know, filleted his arm open. Did you hear about that one just a couple days ago? The firefighter was bit so bad. They said, so, you know, we cover some of those things, but there's interesting, again, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into it, you know, before we ever get to that level. And that's, again, the thing, man, is that people sit back and they go, you know, and you can see it in their face. And then when they talk to you, especially when I interview them, the one thing I'm always looking for is the signs. And I get it by having them tell me the story, just like you would do as a doctor. You know, if a person comes in with chest pain, have you yourself ever in your career, when the person's swearing up and down, they're having a heart attack, they're telling you it's a heart attack. I mean, they're, you know, and at the outskirts, it's a heart attack. You brought them in, you do all this stuff. And all of a sudden your brain, as a doctor, before you've done all of your other diagnostics, your brain starts going, man, I need to be looking for something else because I don't think this is cardiac related. You ever had that happen?
Well, I think that you get the gut feeling sometimes, but that's all.
But see, that gut feeling you got caused you to investigate it further. And that's all we're talking about is that gut feeling. The gut feeling is what we call the human animal and or intuition. And intuition is all based upon your previous life experiences. So that would have to do with training and experience. So however you were trained, and then your experience is how you're going to deal with something. And I use the chest pain analogy just because your brain goes, just because they said their chest hurts, just because I said, you know, I saw this, but something said in that first moment, but yet you've had others, same type of thing. When that person comes in, your brain's going, without a doubt, it's cardiac. And that's what I'm trying to get to, is to go, every single person I have ever interviewed that has been a victim of violence on the job, every one of them tells me at some point in time in their story when it went bad. And they rarely recognize when it was, because they're compelled to stay when they knew they shouldn't. They were compelled to stand still when they felt like they wanted to back up. I mean, there's all these things that we go, see, your human animal or your intuition was telling you this was danger, and not danger as in, you know, subtle, but as in this is not good and it's potentially life-threatening. And they will remain connected. And that's one of the things that we try to bring out with them, is to go, look, the physical side is difficult. And that takes a lot of practice to be, you know, proficient at anything. But if I've got my space, meaning if we've built into the habit on every scene that I step in, I get my hands empty, my hands are above my waist, I talk to someone with respect at a distance of about 6 to 8 feet in those first few moments, that's what buys my human animal the opportunity to go, oh, this is no longer safe. Why do I say it like that? Because the overwhelming majority of agencies, including yours, probably have a staging policy that says stage for known violent scenes. And I go, well, that's wonderful, because here's the irony, that 99% of the criminal assaults that occur to healthcare had nothing to do with a previously known violent scene. There was supposedly
at this point in my staff many times, because we not only do we have a staging policy, but we have kind of a weird staging policy sometimes that has to do where we stage for things that probably there's no other issue for. I mean, obviously active shooting, fine. Okay, great. We're staging, you know, people like to shoot each other a lot in Detroit, you know, something like that. But, you know, for a while we were staging on things that had quote illegal activity, like drug overdoses or something that own data are rarely violent scenes unless they're at certain locations that we already know about. But all of our bad incidents have occurred in you know, with no predictability from their dispatch data.
Correct. And you know, and to add to that very same thing is that, and here's why. You know, the staging kind of thing, like you were just mentioning, where the pendulum is way over here, is identical to the rest of everything else, meaning we haven't given the ability to have a critical thinking skill. So it is either staged for everything, you know, and every scene is violent, everybody's trying to kill us, which is absolutely not true. While violence is most certainly a horrible epidemic right now, you know, we are showing you that still 80% of the population are still good people. But what we've done is, because we deal with evil, we deal with sickness, we deal with dying, we then begin to think everyone is evil, everyone's going to kill us, everyone. And so we already walk in with a different type of persona. It's rare that I find people, and I always try to pick them out. But at the different locations, I'll get some who've worked in inner cities, man, who've been on a truck for 20 years and have never been seriously violently assaulted by a criminal. Granted, they may have had the CBA or the hypoglycemic or something like that, scratched them, slashed them, whatever. But as far as a true criminal assault, they didn't have it. But it only took me like 2 minutes to figure it out why, and that was that it was the way they were as a person. Meaning, for whatever reason. You know what I mean? They possess something different as the ability to be, so forgiving or kind. I'm not saying being victimized. I'm talking two different people. No. There's a difference between the one that walks in and says, "Please attack me. I'm just here to be a victim," versus the person that walks in trying to act like an operator wannabe, and I've got all my SWAT stuff on. I'm coming into grandma's house. That's all. These things are again. I'm just asking for a logical, real, research-based, proven, stuff to go on. But because of this, everybody's trying to kill you thing that they're leaving with, once they hit the street, they put up a fake, and here's where the danger. They put up this fake wall, and it's so fake, it's a fake bravado, that the drunk or drugged individual sees right through it, because the female medic or an EMT or nurse is trying to act like they're big, strong. And I'm not saying ladies aren't big and strong. I'm just trying to prove a point. But they're fake in this setting where this giant, former Marine who's only been in civilian medicine now for like a year and a half, who's, got a black belt in this or that, stands, walks, and talks a certain way and gets people to respond a certain way. Well, this female then tries to do the same thing, and then sees right through this and attacks her. So the women are actually not only assaulted more often than we find than the men, but are assaulted at a higher level, meaning more injuries. And it's because they felt compelled to act the way that the guy is acting. And it goes into just more of the culture. And it's like the more you see, the more you go.
For sure, because you definitely see that in a lot of agencies, particularly where there are fewer women, that it's all like, you've got to have a certain thing, even to get through the agency training sometime. Correct.
And that hasn't been fair, because even if you look at EMS, I've got a paramedic's back. I was ashamed to talk about it for a long time, but now it really affects me. The doctors said, man, if you got it fixed back then, you'd have been 100%. But now they're like, if you do surgery, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is done. You'll never roll again. I'm like, well, that's it. So I deal with the pain because I still like to train. But my point is that on a construction site, a female, I'm gonna back that up. So in EMS, we have, shamed back injury, and it's better now than it was, 27 years ago when it started. But the point is we shame the woman also, going, well, if you can't lift your end of the stretcher on the, the beached whale and the power cut, you shouldn't be in this job. And we go, wait, okay. So let's say I'm a paramedic and I'm a heck of a lot better shape than what I am now. And I'm 265 pounds of stacked muscle because I'm a bodybuilder when I'm not working on a construction site, or on the job. But let's say construction site for a minute. I'm a steel worker, iron worker. I can bench press a zillion pounds. On a construction site, a union construction worker can be removed from the job because they were caught lifting more than 50 pounds, because that is an OSHA kind of a standard that's been put out there. So a bodybuilder can't lift more than 50 pounds without risking losing a job where he's making 35, 40 bucks an hour as a union gig. But yet we will make fun of a female who can't lift, 350 pounds on her end because the person is 600 pounds plus the stretcher. And you know what I mean? So
they spend 2 weeks in the academy on lifting.
And we always have the opportunity to lift appropriately, right? Because we've never down sideways in a ditch with a person upside down. Yeah. Back safety is something that's very important. But my point is, we address that. $18,000 power cots and lifting and moving of patients, training in the academy or training in school, then training whenever they come through your in-house academy, plus all the regular stuff they have to take. And then now a lot of agencies are doing the pre-employment test that's supposed to be a physical test that is really testing your back in a lot of ways, that you can't even go back on the road until you repass it if you suffered some sort of. But, again, I think that's wonderful, but let's, again, keep it in perspective, So I'm sorry, back to some of your questions.
Okay. So, but a lot of it, you're covering a lot of what, I'm interested in, what I've found, us working in the ER at some point in time, and punched, kicked. I certainly have. And I kind of got back into looking at this actually shortly before we had these series of injuries to our medics, but that obviously really kind of got it to the top of our list. So, I mean, there's a couple things I see a lot, not just in our agency, is that like many other things that are important to train on and prepare for, you're right. It's only the real high profile stuff that seems to get the attention. And then it was kind of getting slid down. We do a new academy for new hires, even if they're experienced in work. And, it's a little bit of a struggle to make sure that we were keeping the program in there, just doing the train the trainer effort that we did. Like, there was a little bit of an attitude, not necessarily from people who are here now, but people who are then, that it's like a one and done kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talked to other places, it was amazing. I mean, we surveyed our Eagles group. It's like nobody's doing this. Like a lot of people did what you just said. Oh yeah, the PD guy comes in and talks to us, or their entire violence strategy was they pass out ballistic vests,
And
a
lot of those shootings have been with high power rifles when they set the people up and snipe them from distance. So ballistic vest would do us zero good, but that's neither here nor there. But
no, I know, but I know that. I mean, really, even from the things we do know from high profile. So, I mean, one of the things I'd say is obviously it sounds like you've at least hopefully lots of people are inviting you guys in and interacting with you guys. I mean, do you think it's getting better?
As far as people reaching out and asking questions, or
want to be trained, people taking violence seriously. I mean, because what I wonder from my perspective is I've gotten more into it, so I'm talking to the Kool-Aid drinkers a lot, and we're all like, yeah, but you have a lot of perspective on this. Is it really just that we're not making much progress at this?
Well, and to be honest, while we are making headway, like I said, we're probably still around 1%. And I've been doing it for 20 years. And so I've actually now have a statement that I tell everyone, which is, as I really, challenge those new instructors that are coming out, and I say, guys, I've been doing it for 20 years, and, this is what small piece we have. And so meaning of the culture change. And so that I realize it's not going to happen in my lifetime. And then I tell them, it's probably not going to happen in your, career or lifetime. What we're trying to do is to make it better for that group that follows us. And because it isn't just whether it be just a one and done anything. I mean, the violence is one piece, but man, it branches into so many others. And so while we're getting, and I have to be cautious on how I say some of this too, because it really breaks my heart. But, some of the, off the record. So prior to 2009, nobody, not JEMS, not EMS World, not EMS Responder at the time, nobody. I don't think EMS One even really existed back then. I don't know if they did or not. But so in 2009, John Eric, when he was with EMS Responder, it was when Melissa Greenhagen and Mark Davis were both shot within 13 days of one another. And so he reached out to me through the internet, and they got me the opportunity to, speak at the Nationals. So I spoke at the Nationals. Now, mind you, it's 2009. And while I was there, was the Everybody Goes Home firefighter guys, and they had these great big, literally, when I say books, they're these ginormous manuals that was how firefighters were injured on the job. And so I would flip through them, and I'd go through, and it would be, firefighter stubs toe on hydrant wrench. Make sure to, we have a near miss there. Could have been worse, so make sure you hang up your wrenches. And so I go through literally hundreds and hundreds of pages, and I look at those guys and I said, hey, there's nothing here on violence, because what is 90% of the firefighter's job right now? Running medical calls, right? Running ambulance runs. So then it kind of started, but even then I would submit stuff, and because I don't have a PhD or a bachelor's degree or anything, and my mind is very fast moving, so I don't write the best. But man, all you got to do is have someone ask the questions, and I'd give it to them. But to back it back up, so let's flash forward to 2012. Do you recognize who Skip Kirkwood is by chance?
Sure, I know Skip.
Okay. So for months, I had been on the phone with Skip because he'd had an incident. And so this was in 2011, actually. And we were talking back and forth, and I said, man, it's a much larger problem than you're aware. He disagreed. I said, well, hey, man, someday I'll be in your area, and when I do, please come check it out and see what you find. So as luck would have it, like 6 months later, I was there. he came in and sat in on the class, told me about some stuff that he had found out himself where he was shocked, couldn't believe it was so big of a problem. So he took this stuff to Pinnacle. He literally took my opening 4 hours, the stuff that we used to chip away at the armor, took it to Pinnacle, and was like, look, guys, this is what's going on. We're not listening. We're failing as leaders. I mean, we're not doing what we should be doing in leadership, dealing with this problem. And so he really began to kind of help me champion the cause, so to speak, and to, help me. Oh, here you go. I was on the management track for the National EMS Management Association in Baltimore, and then in Vegas, speaking times. And it was nothing. I mean, nobody would really show up. And the point being is that, just like you said, when you went with the Eagles, I was humbled and honored. I didn't have any idea that you were even going to say anything about it. It was actually somebody had took a picture of where one of the trade mags had taken a shot of you speaking, and then it just said DT4EMS up there on your slide. And so, because I'm usually aware of something well before, just look at social media, right? Something goes on, and somebody has let me know within seconds of it occurring, and usually it's violent somewhere. But my point being is, so he took it to Pinnacle. You were talking there at Eagles, and it's like, so see, here I've been for 20 years, man. Nobody's researched the subject more than me. That doesn't make me smarter than anyone. It just means that I gave a care because it happened to me, and then I started to reach out to go, well, wait a minute, if it happened to me, and here I am, a black belt martial artist, I'm a cop, and I had already written the program at this time, and then I was attacked, and nothing, man. I mean, nothing. And so that's why a lot of what you hear me say is what happens after an assault is so much worse than the assault itself.
Right. Oh yeah. And that's a big part of why I'm writing this article, is to kind of talk about what happened to our medics, what they went through, psychologically, physically. I mean, Kelly, who I just was hanging out with today, she's having what's probably her final surgery in 2 weeks. I mean, this is from, October of 2015 was the attack, right? So, and the whole process that people have gone through is, that's kind of what, my interest in trying to keep this in the forefront. And our interest is when we evaluated, so what I was talking about, like when they took that picture at Eagles, I was talking about our experience trying to look to see what was out there in terms of, what could we do for training, what was happening, because we didn't want to, just do something half-assed, which is how we got hooked up with you guys. And really that whole, we saw exactly what you're describing, like with that firefighter. We've had some tough medics over the years, but we see that, that escalation control. I love that term.
Because while I'm still thinking about the point that I wanted to make about the escalation control. So imagine how a firefighter is taught. And again, I can explain why everything is the way that they are in all the different places. But so I just want to throw something out there for real quick. Let's say it's me, okay, and I have PTSD, and I was labeled with it and was very angry to be labeled with such a thing, and so on and so forth. And that can be a whole other discussion. But let's say I came around the corner. I don't claim to be a tough guy. You, sir, can talk to any of the people who are trained with me and determine as to whether or not I have any skill or not, okay? But let's say I'm rounding a corner, there's a car crash, and it's my child and my wife in that car. And we've told some rookie firemen to keep people back from this scene. And I come around the corner, as I step up there, somebody puts their hand on my chest and says, oh, stop, you can't go up there. Now, you just touched me when I'm already fucking pissed off. What do you think's gonna happen? And so that's what I'm saying is what we've done is we give our people this blanketed thing without qualifying the statement. And so if you qualify with them and you give them the ability to make a decision, reasonable ones, because that's what I'm saying is that the people that teach in the police academies aren't coordinating with the people that are teaching in the fire academy, and they're not coordinating with the people that are teaching in paramedic school. So when I went to the police academy, they told me I was in charge of a scene. When I went to paramedic school, they told me I was in charge of a scene, and the fire guys get told they're in charge of a scene. The problem is nobody defined what your scene is.
Yeah, what's your scene?
Makes sense. And so then what occurs is you see the piston match between the police officer and the firefighter on the side of the road about moving an engine, because the officer knows, if I don't get this lane of traffic open, we're going to have more crashes. So he says to the fire guys, hey guys, can you move that engine? And the engine guys are going, well, I've been taught that I'm going to park this somebody right here so nobody runs over our people. And the trooper's going, brother, I need you to move that truck. And the guy goes, nope. And he's like, look, last time you're going to jail. Because see, they have two different jobs, all with the same goal, but because nobody on the upper level talked, this is why that problem goes on. So we even show your people, well, this, how to handle the hospital or jail with me. But none of it is going to change until the people like you see. That's what I'm just so, flabbergasted right now, is because not only, do you have personal knowledge now of something that's occurred, but I'm telling you that very thing has occurred elsewhere. Just like that. And it was years prior. And we've been speaking about it since, because I met him in 2011, and I've told his story. Right. And then,
every time I talk.
Say again.
I actually ask people to raise their hands about being assaulted every time I talk, always.
But the point is that you, sir, have a platform that I can't reach. Meaning that I don't speak the language. And so because I don't, they will immediately write it off. And, people will tell you, for the longest time, I was a horrible businessman. That's why I put it in the hands of someone else, because I gave everything away. My wife pays the bills. If you knew what I make, you would go, are you serious? Why in the world would you do that? I'm just trying to make what I made on the road as a medic or a policeman. That's it. If I ever did, meaning that could be a salary, I would never complain again. Brother, I'm not even close. And so you just, your medics make, and just understand that I don't even make that. And that was, but I don't do it for that. I think that if you, again, watch some of those videos that I've shared, people are like, before they ever train with me, they're like, man, that's a blah, blah, and I'm a this and I'm that, and there's no way, and that's stupid. But once we've trained together, everything changes, because they see not only the truth of the incident, the reality of what we're facing, but then they see the truth of where I'm coming from. And I think that's why people buy into it. But again, we're at a small level, and no matter who I can have all the angels screaming, going, guys, this message is correct now. Again, I did it wrong for 10 years, but I've got 10 years of doing better, But I couldn't get in front of people like you. You know what I mean? They wouldn't give me the chance. So you now have the ability to make a difference, because the doctors will listen to you.
I don't know. Okay. I'm going to try. I hope they listen to me. There's lots of things that all of us talk about that people just don't care about yet. I think that a lot of it's just keep that chipping away is operative in a lot of different ways.
If it wasn't for my wife, I couldn't be doing this. Her support and stuff like that. But what I just thought of was another doctor. I was in Connecticut, not even going to say where, but a couple of the guys in the room were ex-FDNY and stuff like that were, firefighter medics and stuff like that. Their medical director comes through, and as he walks through, he pauses and he just says, we're close enough that he pauses, and he says, man, I wish we could use this stuff in the hospital. And I go, sir, we got hospitals all over the country using it now. And he goes, and I saw his wheels turning. And he's like, and I said, well, hold on. I said, because I knew where the holdup is. So check this out. Here's the culture on the in-hospital side. So I go, hey, doc, hold on. Let's say you pull up to work at the hospital. You throw on your doc stuff. You throw your lab coat on, your name badge, and we're going to park on the parking garage, but it's all full. So you had to actually park across the street off hospital property. As soon as you step out of your car, a guy recognizes that you're a doctor. You can see he's standing there. He's already been a little bit mouthy. He's got a little bit of a bump on his head, so it looks like he fell. But man, you can smell it a mile away that this guy's drunk. He starts effing you, and he takes a swing at you. My question is, number one, would you defend yourself? Number two, would you call the police and press charges? So, of course, we take time and paint the picture as this person is nothing other than a drunk who's bumped his head, the guy that will still keep going, right? The Energizer Bunny. So the cop's like, well, of course I'd call, the doc's like, of course I'd call the police and defend myself. Same thing, same exact guy, same exact example, but you're now on hospital property. The guy now does it, and they go, and I went, see, there's your problem. You don't give your rights. Your rights don't end upon clocking in, and that's the culture that they made them believe. I can tell you, and I can go, look, your people have no problems calling the cops if one single vial of medicine is missing. If someone broke into the break room and stole the administrator's credit cards, right, and driver's license, so to be able to have identity theft. they would immediately call. If a patient assaults another patient, they'll call the police. But if someone that they're calling a patient attacks a healthcare provider, no, we don't want to. And see, it all goes back to what is or what isn't a patient and culture. That's it. That is if you want to know how we can reduce, and I've said it 100 times on news media all across the country, if you will get your people to understand what is versus what is not a patient, and there is no such thing as a combative patient, can't exist, it's impossible. The moment you do that, you could reduce your assaults by 50% like that. Why? Because you'll have your little bitty gals and your big strong men putting the brakes on for just a second and go, wait a minute, that dude, he can stand. He's trying to tell me he's going to kick my ass. I can smell the alcohol. He's telling me like you're going to beat me up, and I'm, but yet rather than them going up and touching him when he just said, don't touch me, you see?
Yeah.
And so that's the point. So you're going to go, well, what if he gets on and I'll let him go and he gets hit by a car? I go, okay, there's case law on that already. You know what? Case law in New York, it already exists, where we've been saying it for years, but in 2013, it actually happened where the doc said, let the dude go, man. If he wants to leave, his drunk ass can leave. So he does get that, proverbial, oh my God, he got hit by a car. So he tries to sue. Court said, hey, not only can a doctor not keep you in the hospital just because your ass is drunk, but he has no real right, to do so.
Right. Exactly. That's a topic I've brought up many times to hospital administrators who don't seem to get it.
And the moment you do, your people are instantly safer. I can give you an example of a level 1 trauma center. Some people took our train the trainer, and one of the guys is, he is a monster, a CrossFit, type of instructor, and really a skilled guy, right? And so he's an RN, also a flight nurse, and blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, he takes the class. He just happens to be on shift literally like the day after becoming an instructor, and they haven't had time to roll it out, haven't even had any of their classes yet. Well, at the end of the hall or one of their pods, I guess a drunk guy literally knocks out the security guard, pulls a piece of ice. And he's, I'm out of here, no big deal. He's just ripping the thing out. But my point is, he just knocked out the security guard. All these nurses are running to try to get a hold of this guy. At the moment he's processing, so he's screaming at him, stop, let him go. And he said you could see their shock, kind of like, what? And then they let the dude go, and that's it. And so once the hospital, started getting into that mode, their calls to law enforcement go up, but yet their injury rate from violence goes down. And it's like you go, see, because all I'm asking is that's what they do, and Doc, I don't know if you've ever heard me use this example before, but what I do is this. I say, take a firefighter, a policeman, and a paramedic. Each are trained professionals and experienced in their craft. If a firefighter is dispatched to a fire alarm, that there's a structure fire, firefighters show up with all their firefighting gear, and somebody has just pulled an alarm like at a school, and it was a kid doing it as a prank. Do the firefighters start pulling hose and spray water on the building, although there's no fire, just because they were dispatched to it? The answer is, of course, no. But then could a bystander, meaning a paramedic or a policeman, look at the fire guys and go, hey, put water on that building. That building had a fire alarm. That means it's got to be in there somewhere. So the firefighter is like, look, dude, pound sand. There's no fire. I'm not putting water in the building. All right, contrast that. Policeman can show up to something, and the policeman has been trained on what is or what is not criminal activity. So I can tell someone is a civilian or anybody else go, you need to arrest him, and the cop be like, they haven't met the elements. I have to write up a report and we'll send it to the prosecutor. Or if they have met the elements, they would arrest him. But no one else could go, you need to arrest that person, meaning you as the non-trained person can't tell me who I should or who I shouldn't take.
Sure.
As a policeman. All right. So then why is it that in healthcare, EMS and ED people are the only ones told you will take that person to the hospital? You will. And so what you've done, not you personally, what I'm saying is what we've done as a culture, believe it or not, is compel them to hold on to people that they shouldn't, because we've said you don't possess the critical thinking skills to, when this guy has an airway, has this, has that, he's back, that you can back away and wait for just a minute. And so see, it's that type of mentality that I'm trying to prove, to say, look, we are the only ones that they say you're going to take them to the hospital. Because on contrast, what we have is people that have taken our program and they're trying to talk to medical direction, going, look, this guy isn't wanting to come, and the cops are trying to hospital with them or jail with me, and I don't feel comfortable. And they're like, well, you need to take him. How? Right? And so now you put the frontline person on the thing, and next thing you know, it's like it turns into monkeys having sex with a football, and people are injured, there's lawsuits, and I'm not saying that we're not going to have to deal with jerks. We all deal with jerks. Whether whether you work at McDonald's, you're going to deal with someone as a customer who is a jerk. But what I am saying is, the moment we get back to neutral, we show people what is or what is not a patient, that we strip away the jadedness that our culture has become and begin to let those people be who they truly were. Because every one of us, you included, were called to do what you do. We don't always understand why we were called, but every one of us were called. And it's because we don't fit well in other places. So, you fit well as an ED doc and as a leader of an ED doc and a, medical director, because you were pulled to that. You were chosen. Something said, I want to do that. I was never cut out to sit in a factory making $1 bazillion an hour, moving one piece of wood to here to here. Would have never done it. I'd have stayed poor, as would most of your people. I'm still poor, as my wife pays the bills. But what I'm getting at is that I didn't join paramedicine or law enforcement because I thought it was going to ever, let me have a boat or a motorhome or take fancy vacations. I did it because I wanted to. And because I felt compelled to help other people, and underlying tone everywhere I've been, man, it's the same. When I strip away the lies, and I don't care if it's, and I'm telling you, Jersey City is going to be very similar to Detroit. Detroit is going to be very similar to the night shift guys at Denver. It would be very similar to, the poorest places that I've been in West Virginia. And so, in other words, it's all relative. It's all based upon how many people you got, what your population is, because race matters not. Financial status matters not. I've had, attorneys choke paramedics just the same.
Absolutely. We know that for.
But and so again, why it's all brrr is because I'm getting so afraid now that I'm close, but I don't have enough. I haven't been able to give everything. I could show it to you on my phone. I was on the last flight, and I shared it to the instructors because we have our private instructor areas, and I share it with them that I'm going. Every class has been the guinea pig for the class that follows. Meaning, we're always trying to get better. And what I'm afraid of is that I'm not going to be able to pass it on the same. When people leave, they leave, training with me, feeling a certain way because I've tricked them. And I'm not tricking them to be deceptive. I'm tricking to get past the lies so that I can know who they really are.
Many good training strategies.
Yeah, and well, my point is I've had lots of little tips and tricks, and I haven't always put them on paper. And so I've been trying, and I start. My fear is something's going to happen, and it begins to fall on its face because, like I said, man, I couldn't get anything, nothing. Nobody would listen. But then you get one here and one there, and so then. Do everything possible. Man, I even offered at one time to come in and do a free train the trainer to show you how bad this stuff really is. I would do a free train the trainer for your entire agency if your story, meaning all I was trying to do was to get people to really write down what has happened to them. You know what I mean? And have it, because I have a bazillion emails that I've said, if I die, my wife knows my email is open to the world, so it can be in the face of all those people that said that it doesn't happen. Right?
Yeah.
First thing.
Oh yeah.
But that's a me and you kind of discussion there. So my wife knows that, because if I've shook your hand and said it's between us, it's between us. Well, anyway, I was trying to get them to give me their stories, and not one. That would have been, I'd have paid for my own plane, hotel, everything. Would have brought everything to your place. Would have done an entire train the trainer program, so you could have had it free of charge if yours would have been selected as, saying why, your department needed fire hydrants or fire alarms more than this department. That's all I was trying to do.
Yeah.
Man, you can't get people to talk about it. And I have one who's an administrator who is probably one of the most wonderful, kind, amazing guys I've ever met in my life. The dude looks like he bench presses Volkswagen Beetles. Lost his home, went through a divorce, everything, because he was attacked on the job, and he didn't even do anything except try to swat the person away. Now, mind you, he was helping his crew. So he's lifting at the lower, or loading the stretcher. So the legs are already up. It's going in. The woman was drunk. She starts rabbit stomping him in the face with her foot. Well, it's already latched with the safety latch on the top. So it causes him, we as humans, when we have a startle or a flinch response, there's a lot of gripping, that goes on. And many times you can't turn loose. So that's why we spend so much time in our class of going, get your hands open, get them open. And if you're being choked, we don't want them doing this because they won't turn loose. And I can show you 1,000 scene videos to prove that. People won't listen to me. I'm just trying to go, look, this is what we face, damn it, listen. So anyway, he's getting rabbit stomped. It causes him to be dazed. He loses balance. And as he comes out, the end of the stretcher now is pinned in by the shins on the ground. So the stretcher is sitting like this in the back of the ambulance, where the feet are now blocking him in, and the top is still connected on the truck, but he's pinned underneath. The woman comes out, continuing to try to stomp him, and he swats her leg away like this. That's it. The state of New Jersey fired him and called him a danger to the public. So even the woman herself testified. I wrote a 7-page opinion letter. I broke down everything, man. And when you meet him, this guy is like Stephen Covey, every other word. He's like a leadership's leader, and he's like the most eloquent speaker, and kindness oozes from him. and he went through a divorce, lost his home, lost his vacation home. After him to go, a year and a half for their state to finally go, well, okay, it looks like you didn't do anything wrong, so here's your license back. And see, that's the other stuff that goes on that nobody knows about. A nurse grabbed, being punched repeatedly in the face by a doper. Security steps around the corner, sees the meaning the nurse being blasted by a doper. The nurse only slaps her to break free. Security guard sees it. They fired the nurse.
Of course, yeah. I've heard those stories.
I have hundreds, and that's what I mean. Is the pendulum swings so far, and what we're going is, you need to understand something. It's just like and you might not, hear it all the time, but the truth is, and please don't put this out there because I don't want to ruin the class for people that haven't taken it. But it's not about, it's a trick, and what we're really doing when we reveal the truth to the people. We reveal their truth to them. See, many of them think they're tougher than what they are. And dude, I spent my entire life training to be a tough guy. And I'm telling you, I still get my ass handed to me when I go to jiu-jitsu or stick work or knife work or whatever. Okay. The point is that you're never, better than everyone else. And so hidden message. And the other thing is, man, if I'm being really nice to people, it's hard for them to want to punch me in the mouth. And so we're trying to get people to go, and when they first hear it, they're like, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Customer service is a self-defense tactic. And it's like, I'm telling you. And if you don't believe me, consider this. When people complain in healthcare, do they complain about the medical care they received, or do they complain about how they were treated as a person?
Because they don't even know if they got good medical care or not.
Right. And so, see, that's what we're trying to prove to them. And
people are happy getting terrible medical care, right?
Yeah.
As long as people listen to them and are nice to them and take care of the other thing.
So I use the example in classes, but again, you can't bring it up until they're ready to hear it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of little stuff that we do the first day of class when you really break it down. And again, this is not for you to share. The first part is all about chipping away. So the first 4 hours is a bunch of crap that we have to get through just to even start to show them some definition. So the first 4 hours is a bunch of crap. They come in like this in the beginning. By hour 4, they're going, oh my God. Then the rest of day 1 is just some definitions. Day 2 is machine gunning information. And I call it a snow globe. It's not until lunchtime of day 2 does the snow globe really start to settle. And so that's why those that have gone on to be like through the train the trainer are so indoctrinated into all the little, where they look so good with the skill. Come on. I stood up in front of a top 10 UFC fighter and told him, get right in front of him and said, punch me in the mouth. He's on the video saying that that's when his buy-in came was, hey, man, he got me ever. I thought it was going to be more of this love and hugs and roses and all that crap. The guy has me get up in front of the room, a top 10 welterweight. Okay, the guy fought people like Koscheck and all those, who is now a paramedic in West Virginia. I bring him up to the front of the room and go punch me in the mouth. The reason I can do that is because it's self-defense. If I try to square off on him, I'm dead. It's people don't understand. See, they don't know what self-defense is. They think that self-defense is winning a fight. That's not true. Self-defense is simply refusing to be beaten. And that refusing to be beaten, a lot of times, again, please don't reveal this, comes out in class because I'll get that young athlete who's maybe a wrestler, maybe an MMA guy, just whatever, but we'll go to rolling somewhere, and what they try to do is suppress a little bit. And as they do, I do what I do. And usually one of two things happens. More often than not, the skilled people never try you because they listen to the message. They train all the time. So they're going, oh, yeah, well, that does make sense. That's true. There's those who only have a little bit, they want to try it. And so as they try, I start to do stuff that puts them from bad place to bad place to bad place to bad place. Then finally they decide, oh, I don't want to be here any longer, and they back away. When they do, I can't keep a hold of them because they've decided I no longer want to remain engaged. It becomes an instant teaching moment for the entire class, and they'll go, oh my gosh. But see, I can't tell you that when they occur. I can't even tell the other instructors when those are going to occur, but they occur almost every class. And when they do, it's this huge empowering moment that gets that person to go. And so I had, just where I was at in Texas, I even have him on camera because I started now going, I could tell you this all day long and you wouldn't listen to me. But if I've got someone else who just had it happen to them, they're going to listen. I tell them that I go, you've been teaching the adult learner in emergency medicine wrong for a long time. But because I don't have a degree, you won't listen to me. But yet, why is it I can right now go into my garage and pull out all the other hard copies of all the classes over 20 years and let you select any file from any class anywhere. And you can go pick class number 10 in there, and I'll pull it out and I'll grab it, and we can roll down and I'll pull whatever eval you tell me to, and I'll pull it out. And I guarantee you it'll look the same as a bunch of others. It'll say, wish we had more time. It was more fun than I expected. Oh my God, this really worked, right? All this stuff. Well, so I'm in Texas,
Yeah.
and I have the guy who's brilliant. He's a medic. He's educated. He's got a degree, and he's working now even on his master's. But as we're working on it, I try to show him one of our whole sections of the class is all about how your brain processes information under stress. So we do all these different things to try to get you to experience it. Well, I see during his part now, see he's done with the initial, then day 3 is teaching you why we do all the stuff that we do, you know, the reasons behind it, which now is a whole new set of information. And then days 4 and 5 are them trying to practice and present in front of us, you know, a guy who wrote the program, how they're going to present the message. And so we just look for improvement, not perfection. So we're now into day 4 and 5 of the, you know, train the trainer program. And here's this brilliant medic, brilliant guy who's way up on their ladder, who is trying to teach this simple thing. And what we do is say, and please don't share this, it's all tricks. When we teach our people,
my fellow stayed for the whole class here, so my EMS fellow.
So I'll tell him real quick, and I'll go, hey man, I said if you try to teach a skill and you're still new at teaching it, and you try to talk as you're teaching it, you miss steps. And so we do a thing called RACE, R-A-C-E, which stands for Recognize, Analyze, Calculate, Execute, which is the process our brain has to go through. I cannot execute unless I've gone through the other stages. I will freeze, I will, do whatever, but I can't get to an E, meaning my brain has to recognize what you've asked me to do, analyze how to do that, calculate what it's going to take for me to do that, and then E, actually do it. And so at any point in time in there, if I interrupt that person, I set them back to R, and so it freezes them. If they are thinking, it's the same as if they're trying to do a skill. So if they're trying to talk themselves through a skill, they're trying to go R-A-C-E, and it looks like a robot or a marble rolling over a washboard. And so I use multiple examples. One is I throw a ball to you and you catch it. And then I go, well, how are you able to, predict the future? Are you a mind reader? The other thing is I never said a word to them. I bring someone, I just pick a random person up. I bring them up by like doing this. And then I have them come up and I do, I don't say a word. I've got a tennis ball in my hand behind my back. I bring them up and I do this, and then I just throw the ball. They catch it, right? And so then I go, so what did your verbal skills have to do with that? Zero. Because how did you know I wanted you to come up here? How did you know I was going to throw a ball to you? And then how the hell did you catch the ball? So see, the words you said meant squat. The words I said meant squat because I didn't say any. So that's the first thing. And the next part is I have someone bigger, stronger than me hold my arm down to my side, make a big deal about how they are using their entire core and their bicep and tricep. But yet if I'm trying to raise to the side, the only thing I can use is deltoids. So I have the person hold, and then this is why everybody watches. Then I reach around my other hand and I go, bloop, and I simply touch them on the forehead and I can raise my arm. This person who's holding me gives you this look of, the hell just happened? They have no idea. Their brain is now spinning. The whole class starts laughing. And I go, what happened? And they're like, and I said, that's what we're going to tell you next. And so then we break down how the brain processes. Well, I say all that to say this. So the educated guy is trying to teach his skill, and I ask a question. He starts talking through, and then I ask the question. So as soon as he begins to answer the question, he begins to screw up. And then so I begin to look at the room, and then they're looking at me because they know they're not the ones in the hot seat, right? They're not the ones teaching the skills.
Yeah,
so,
right. It's the other guy.
Right? So they now see he's messed up, so they get it. So then one starts to offer advice, then the other one starts to offer advice. Next thing you know, because I look for it, I can see his brain just spinning, and he has no clue. He is now vapor locked. He cannot do the simplest of tactics because he's completely missed it. And so then I go, break, and I stop him and I get him to admit the fact of what occurred, just then. And then they're like, son of a gun. And I tell them, Kip is going to be the most brilliant idiot you've ever met. And the reason is I don't have a degree. All I've studied is this. I can't tell you about anything else really in life. I can't change a doorknob or my spark plugs or oil. I'm not good at that. I have spent over 20 years just this. So why does it happen? What are we going to do about it? How can we fix it? And then now the worst part is trying to get people to listen. But anyway, we do the user piece, then the instructors have a piece, but then, you even ask questions about, what should we do about, ongoing training? Well, that's personal. Everybody should do something. I tell every class that regardless of where I'm at, there's 2 things I do every day. Number 1 is I sidestep. And number 2 is I do target seeking in the mirror when I shave. And while it sounds silly, it is because those are the skills that I wouldn't have to think about, that my body will do on its own. And I've proven it. And again, how did I have former military elite, amateurs and pro fighters, and, all these people of all these different levels, martial arts disciplines, but are also paramedics, nurses, firefighters, EMTs, prior military, prior law enforcement, current law enforcement, all going, holy crap, I had no idea. The reason It's the truth. And sometimes the truth isn't what people really want to hear. You know, they want something that is easy, painless. You know, you can really guide me, you know, into or not necessarily even guide me, because you're going to experience the same thing that you know, Skip did, which is exactly what I did. You know, it falls on deaf ears, and it's not until I have to find that point. And the part that is also kind of off the record, the reason I was meeting with those insurance companies, and I can show you the risk management stuff right now, the reason the insurance companies reached out to us is they're going, you know, all of a sudden we're paying out almost as much in violence as we have been in back injuries. Y'all know why that is? Why is the assaults going through the roof? And so I speak at the conference, and these risk managers are hiding their eyes like this when I'm showing them some of the very videos of our staff being attacked. And this is what they do. And so what you're about to see is the insurance companies on the backside are going, look, you guys are going to be training, or, you know, we can't insure you anymore. Because remember, the risk management people, those insurers don't pick up until it's like $300,000 and more. You know what I mean? So they're there because of the bad deals. And it's whether or not your employee got sued, or you got sued, or they got hurt. And, you know, that's where it's headed. So for years in the back of my mind, I was just starting to get bitter. And I'd go, well, fine. You know, if you don't want to listen to me while I'm trying to help you for free, you know, which was a lot of those things I did, you know, calling an employer going, look, don't let your employee say this, you know, well, we can't talk, it's HIPAA. I'm going, shut up. I don't want to know HIPAA. I'm trying to tell you to talk to your employee and to tell him this, you know, don't say a word. But they're like, well, we don't want to. And I'm like, then have your freaking attorney call me. I'm trying to tell you, shut up and don't say that. And then what do? They don't listen to me. They say it. Next thing you know, it's an $11 million lawsuit. And, you know, but I didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask them to be a client. I'm just going, please listen, you know, because these are your people that are about to get hung out to dry, and I can help you avoid that. So anyway, all right, I'm sorry, back to your questions. I know you're busy, and it's just
I would have to go pretty soon, but I definitely will have some follow-up too when I digest this, because this is awesome. I love the videos too, were really helpful. And I'll kind of send you kind of the summary too as we're getting ready, because like I said, this is kind of, I'm kind of writing this article as we go through these steps.
Well, and also I'll be able to, once we click the stop on this and I save it, you'll have a private link. So you'll be able to go back and forth, however you want to. Nobody else will have it.
Let me just ask you, you know, as you get into the, like, you know, the kind of continuing education and the kind of, you know, there's some of the law enforcement people have talked to some of our training people about some of these, you know, they're relatively high fidelity simulators that are out there that the law, like this one called Milo that our police department uses. Like, you know, what's your experience with those, thoughts on those as a continuing?
I think stuff like that is absolutely fantastic. You know, anything that, but again, you know, our brain is always going to be faster than the computer, and there are different pieces that are in it. Because I've used ones that were known as like FAT systems, that were like firearms training.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
You know, it was very, very much a similar one. And I was actually approached by that group who was doing one of the ones that was to deal with violence and that sort of stuff, trying to create one for the healthcare arena. And I'm thinking, hey, you know, I still think that's a wonderful thing, because any time that we can give our people the critical thinking skill, and what I actually, I'll be honest with you, that's a way to test where they're at, you know what I mean? But you have to first give people the ability to have a critical thinking skill. And what I mean by it is, it's like, for instance, a place that uses me a lot asked me to come in, and I have gone and I've taught multiple small things for them, but never, you know, like a full program. So they called me and said, hey, look, for our competition bowl this year at their conference, we're going to do one on violence. And I said, don't do that. I said, you cannot do that. Humans are unpredictable, and the opportunity for someone to get hurt is high. And so, knowing that people don't listen, I kept all the emails. Well, anyway, sure as stuff goes, basically they had the scenario set up, and a person comes in with a starter gun, bang, 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 and starts shooting. And when they do, one of the providers, who was former military, just dives in, tackles the guy, because again, they had no idea this was going to happen. They had no idea that violence was even going to be an issue. So apparently in it, one of the guys ended up having to get stitches. One of them ended up with a broken arm that was, I was heard it was an open fracture, all from a scenario that they should have never done, because you can't test someone on a skill if you've never given them, you know, some form of option. Because the only time we freeze as humans is when we're somewhere we've never been before. And what I mean by that is that mental preparation is just as important as any physical skill, but the mental prep is the stuff that you can do going, you know, what would I do if? You know what I mean? What would I do if? But you needed to give people reasonable options before they can even begin to. And it's that whole, if I go, I just do whatever it takes to go home. Okay, well, if that's what you're telling your people and that's what you leave them with, then I can walk onto every flipping call from here on out. I pull out my Glock and I start putting powder burns on everybody's face when I walk in the room. I get to go home that night. You told me I just do whatever it takes to go home. That's what I felt it took.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not reasonable, but that's essentially, you know, what you're doing. It's the whole O2 bottle to the head. It's the whack 'em with the mag light. It's the railback whack. And we pressure tested that stuff and proved that every time you say that stuff, you're giving people false hope, and you're putting something in their brain that is not going to work anyway. And
Right.
it's just, anyway, I think that those simulators and things like that are absolutely fantastic, but none of it will replace the ability to have some form of interaction, because again, remember, what I want to do is, and this is an administrator thing, right, that I didn't look at in the beginning, but because of the way we teach and the way that we make stuff available for the people after class, meaning that they have a ton. So just because they learn this piece, we show them all these different exercises and games and drills and thought processes. That's all private to them. You know what I mean? They're able to log in, they think about it, they do this, and oh, nobody has to know. I can practice this piece alone and nobody can see me. So we're removing that person's ability of like Walker versus New York, which was nobody said I could, nobody said I couldn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Walker versus New York is when I whack him in the head with the O2 bottle, or I'm the doc and I slam him full of meds that paralyze him and I intubate him just because he was being an asshole. Well, nobody told me I couldn't. You know what I mean? And so if this guy dies, the doc goes,
Yeah, exactly.
Where I couldn't. And you know, it's the same. It's the same as someone spitting in your food. It's the same as that officer who, you know, kicks that handcuff guy one more time. It's all the same. You know, it's when we've changed who we are as a person and become punitive. But to answer that question, absolutely wonderful. I think anything, provided that the people have been given a reasonable response to begin with, because if all you do is stress the human, it's based upon my training experience. So if all I am is a pro boxer off to the side, but now I've decided to become a paramedic, or I'm just getting back from Afghanistan and I have a black belt in the Marine Corps martial arts program, which is a serious combat system, right? And a grandma grabs me by the throat and I respond the way I did with the Marine Corps martial arts combatives, you see, because we just did a technique. So if we didn't give them the critical thinking skill, this was grandma, this is a doper trying to hurt you.
Exactly. Right. Right. I mean, I think that's a great point that I've certainly talked about, but I don't think I've ever made it as clear about that patient, not inpatient situation and the kind of tolerance that people have. That's an excellent point.
Because it's all one moment in time. And actually that is our focus. And to put it into a nutshell is I'm trying to give you the ability to purchase one moment in time. And that moment is what allows me to purchase the next and then maybe the next. Because the one thing I can assure you as being a subject matter expert in the use of force, no matter how you want to look at it, because I'm a martial artist and a policeman and I was a police instructor and I'm the founder of this and pressure tested all of our stuff and have a bazillion people to say, okay, this guy gets it. To say, the bad guy didn't come to class. So therefore, to go from A to Z is not appropriate. It's impossible. Even to go ABC is very dangerous. Instead, I go, because in healthcare, you can relate it to say, couldn't I start a VFib code? And all of a sudden, somewhere in it, the person is now in, you know, VTAC. Uh-oh, it's now asystole. Uh-oh, it's now PEA or EMD. So it's the same. What we're doing is we want to give them the ability to change course. And the whole moment in time thing is no more important than that recognizing in a split second, which no one else on the planet has to do, by the way. We, healthcare only, have to recognize, am I dealing with a confused patient or am I dealing with a criminal aggressor? That's why there's no such thing as combative patient. It just can't exist. It is such a dangerous term. But if you think about it, if a policeman steps around a corner and a guy reaches out and grabs the cop, does the cop go, "Sir, is your blood sugar okay?" You know, no.
Yeah.
If a woman is leaving a big box store and it's dark and she goes to put her keys in the car and someone bear hugs her, does she have to go, "Gee, I wonder if this person is hypoglycemic or maybe their ammonia level's off," before they defend themselves? You see, nobody else on the planet, not two guys meeting in the back alley of a bar, not two guys meeting, you know, fist fighting in the bar. No one else on the planet has to make a reasonable decision like the healthcare provider of patient or aggressor in that moment. So now you see why the skills are the way that they are, is because, sorry guys, we're already behind the 8 ball, because your brain processing walks into a house thinking I'm here to deal with a patient. I may or may not be aggressed upon, but I can't walk in being paranoid thinking everyone's trying to kill me, or I become jaded and treat everyone like crap. You see, just this whole, it's a whole big thing. But anyway, so, you know, that the patient versus aggressor is huge. And that's I did multiple long videos on it trying to go, listen, this is it. Everything boils down to this. And it boils down to what that person does at the end of the day. If your provider treats a patient as if the patient was an aggressor, your provider goes to jail, loses their job, the hospital gets sued, whatever. If the provider treats a attacker like a patient, the provider gets beat up, they get ridiculed, they get made fun of, they get injured, they're changed forever. You know what I mean? It's just, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been called a fool because I've tried to get people to buy into that thought process right there. That goes back to the whole thing. I could reduce your assaults in healthcare by 50% overnight. But like just by going, that is or is not a patient, because your people. So see, that's why you get 0 to 4 hours on your soft restraints, is because you're not supposed to be trying to restrain the criminal aggressor. That's why a cop doesn't even use empty hands. If you see the average policeman using empty hands, because they screwed up somewhere, right? They have tags, pepper spray, baton, 5 other cops. You know, we become this green or blue, whatever color scrubs your pile is in your ED, because you were holding on to someone that's tossing your staff around like rag dolls, and admin goes, it's just part of the job. So the part that I'm very cautious to say, but I'm going to tell you how I say it right now, is when I hear them say that, because they go, well, if they was drunk or you can't refuse or this, that, I'm going to say, okay, you know what? I have PTSD. So let me have that conversation with your administrator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk in there, I'm going to crack open a beer. I'm going to swallow it, I'm going to punch him dead in the fucking mouth. And then when I do that, I'm going to say, oh, you can't do nothing. I'm in your hospital. I'm a patient. You can't do it. I have PTSD. Therefore, I'm a patient, because 1 beer smells the same as 10. And when you say it like that, then people, of course, get all offended. But the thing is it's just the truth. It's what you said that has to happen to them. These little girls that are coming out, you're not the one that turn around. I just shared it. That's why I was all pissed off the other day, is because I just shared it. 2 girls, back-to-back classes. When we're doing the choke escape, freeze. I mean, they lock up, man. The tears are streaming down their face. They're quivering. You know, because I'm going, look, I'm not going to touch you. You can choke me first. And this is because nobody needs to hear that message more than that girl does right now. Why? Because they've had that happen to them.
Absolutely.
It's really happened to them on the job. And you got some administrator goes, well, that's part of the job. Really? If that was your daughter, if it was your wife, you wouldn't feel the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely, I've had that discussion with administrators too.
But, and so, sorry. So
no, with you, man. I feel that. I thought I did my job over a discussion about that one time. So, and
you know, and the, see, now I got to settle, but the point is that I can prove it. I can prove all of it. I mean, I can prove every single bit of it. You know, a lot of them we wouldn't be able to publish, but I'll show you. I mean, it's all in, you know, I can't fake who it came from. You know, I mean, you can see all the little stuff, and we can even go all the way to Google or Microsoft or whatever. We go, yep, that was delivered from that server to you. And so I can have the others. I have videos, man, where I videoed it, and you know, I can prove everything. But it's just a matter of, because I've given my word, you know, and until they're ready, you know, and this is how they get ready, is because every single time that one person talks about it, it begins to break down the barrier to discussing it. And it's not, I would have to almost even equate it like, remember how we were with like AIDS and HIV, you know, when it first came out? Sure. Everybody was just, you know, boom. And so it was instantly a death sentence. And we, you know, treated people with HIV or AIDS, you know, so horrifically when you really think about it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even when I was an early medic, when I was working in Belgrade and Pahokee, it was where the CDC was doing one of their studies, because they thought mosquitoes were transmitting it, because the per capita HIV was through the roof. And so when you, you know, you look back on that stuff, it's like, how many things have we, you know, once we were educated about it and we were, you know, fixed over something, did we turn around and go, oh, okay, well, it really wasn't as, the monster isn't as bad as what you think. But it's because when you see, again, the media only covers the really bad assaults. So there's a that occur.
Those even really bad ones don't get covered at all.
Yeah, and so I'm talking even so like it's even just your local media. So when those are there, then your providers or the end users or the family members of those providers believe that the only ones that occur are the bad ones. But yet all of these others here are just as life-changing. The girls that are choked and, you know, sexually assaulted in the back of an ambulance and you know, by a convicted rapist and, you know, blah, blah. I mean, you know, but yet they're just as affected as the person who was not sexually assaulted, but, you know, had their face lacerated. You know, that person has changed forever, you know, and it's that not wanting a person to be me. I mean, just before I came on, I was at the doctor, you know, why? Because I'm having more issues again. And it was, you know, and I had, you know, it's you don't have to die to be changed forever, and that I can assure you.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah.
And you know, that's been my driving factor, is I don't want anybody to, I don't want them to be me. You know, I can't tell you the last time I went fishing and was able to just enjoy fishing, you know, or watch a movie, because this is all I think of. But I'll have to quit. But anyway, it's, we can make a difference. And the thing is, one moment in time, we don't know the difference that one moment in time makes for that one person, because if that mother of 5 would have, you know, possibly backed away for a second, you know, if somebody would have told the medic, you know, I don't have to hold on to that drunk guy when he says, let me out of this effing truck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's that the nurse won't get her stabbed multiple times because, you know, somebody said, hey, this is, you know, not cool. I don't have to stay here. You know, it's just, it's, we can make a difference. And you hold a key to opening a bunch of eyes. And I'm just offended that's why at first I was kind of like, you know, when you said they asked you to reach out, and I'm like, I can't tell you how many times over the years I've submitted stuff and they just, you know, I'm not smart enough. I'm not, you know, my stuff doesn't flow well enough, or because I don't like how they've titled something because it would give the wrong message. You know, it's just, you know, so anyway.
Well, I think they were really interested in the story of our medics and what happened to them and how how they were coping and the workers, everything they dealt with. But to me, I mean, I'm the one that told them, so they could easily just burn that part too, dude. But my part of it was it's the whole reaction and the whole, you know, that what's important to talk about. And this is what our medics themselves said, is important to talk about the whole picture and to talk about what the department changed and how we can keep that in people's minds and why people don't have to be victims. And, you know, so that's what I owe my medics. I'm going to have to get going soon.
Yeah. And I apologize. And I will also say that it really,
yeah, I'm really interested in what you're doing.
So much of it, and we've seen it again. If I showed you if I had a graph, and I just can't sit long enough to always do it, you know, I get a few minutes here, a few minutes there, but if I could show you a graph, literally the 9 out of 10 success on the street stories that come into me are things that have to do with, they recognized something ahead of time and did something, said something, acted a certain way, and completely changed the dynamics of a situation. Meaning that because we've removed the neutrality and because we act like we're commanding people or ordering them, there's all these bad things that we're doing that have caused it to be the monster that it is. And something as little as making a person believe I care, and you hit on a high point a minute ago, which was listen. And that's another thing of scene times and this and that, you know, you know, our people, why does that little old lady keep going to that quack doctor in your town? Why? Because he listens to her. Right. And so when we keep telling our medics, get on and get off of a scene, whether it's trauma or not, oh, got 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And this. So what started happening is even a guy like me who was customer service driven was, oh, I'm going to get in trouble, so I got to go. And grandma's going, but I got to get and you're like, ma'am, you need to get on the strip. And so see, then now the son is pissed because you're wrestling. That you see, it's like, and you can show it. But because the bean counter sees something different, which I get, I understand that. We can't have a job if we don't do what the bean counters need us to, but the bean counters also need to understand, if you're rushing your people, we're making all this stuff back, ordering someone, stop, back up, get away. It's not always good when emotions are already high. So I know you got to go. I'll send you the link as soon as I click the stop, and I'll email it to you.
Okay.
You know?
And I'll definitely I'll follow up and I'll give you some of the thoughts. And I'm actually talking to I was talking to our academy this morning, and I'm going to be talking to them again, specifically trying to educate them on exactly that point about, you know, when the guy wants to get out of your ambulance and is you know, he's a guy that's acting, you know, and he's dangerous to you, you just let him go. Okay.
Yeah, that's a part of our class. What we tell them is we have immediately solved the problem. And I have tons of people that can prove it. Even though the guy that was the top 10 UFC fighter has had drunk people go, man, I'll just whoop your ass. And it's like, really, dude, you have no idea who you're talking to. But he says what we tell him, which is like, look, hey, man, I'm just a paramedic. We're going to give you a ride to the hospital. If at any time you don't want to go, let me know, man. We'll pull over somewhere safe and let you out. The moment you do that, remove the perception of custody of this guy. And then they go, oh, man, all right, man, well, I'll just go to the hospital with you then. You see, but even as an ER doc, you can address it on a whole other level, because how many people are seen in your ED for no other reason, brought in by your services for no other reason? Survey your people, because the guarantee the numbers will be
or brought in by law enforcement, because they don't want to deal with them, like the point you were making earlier.
That's right. And the moment we get admin to talk to admin about what the truth is, see, law enforcement got scared, so their city attorneys were telling them, you know, ED, so we're worried about sudden in custody death syndrome, so, you know, get EMS and get them to the hospital. I got to get a fit for confinement. And finally, I've got doctors starting to go, wait a minute, the actual numbers of an alcohol level mean crap, because I can have a 16-year-old girl with a .06 can be a respiratory arrest, but I can have a guy who's a wino that walks right, that dude wakes up at .2. You know,
right? You have to start drinking.
Yeah, and so you can't. You need to base it on more than just some numbers, and that's another.
We have getting around that, I think, in Detroit. I mean, I think some of that's just from years of having to deal with it. We've kind of gotten that, the clinical sobriety, and you know, you're perfectly functional, and you know, none of these people even. They don't own a car. They take the bus, like, you know, whatever. Like, I don't care. You know, if you go out and drink, it's just like the point I always tell people about that in particular is I say to my resident or my other doctors who I know these guys, you know, I say, you go out and drink, right? If you've had a few, you can take a cab home.
That's my example. That's my very example.
You can do whatever, you know how to do it as well as this guy knows how to do it. So what's the difference?
The only thing we're saying is because, see, they've not given a critical thinking skill. We're not talking about the alcohol poisoning that's in respiratory depression, that has no gag reflex. That's not what we're saying. You pour those people on the stretcher, they're not the ones fighting you. What we're talking about is the person who has a small cut that looks like it's really bad, who the cops gave him the opportunity to go to hospital with them or jail with me. And so the next thing you know, this dude is criminally assaulting all kinds of staff members. And the point is that person knew. You know, I say the same thing. And I go, hey, have you been drunk enough you had to hug a toilet? And they're all like, well, yeah. I'm like, did you need an ambulance then? And so, you know, and you can even take it even deeper and to go, tell me the difference on the breath of 1 beer versus 10 beers. Can you tell me the difference? And what all does a police officer have to go through just to say a person is at a .08 to take custody of them, say they should have been driving? So when you look at that in a big picture, it's the same. All we're saying is, look, just because you, and that's what we've done with our providers, is giving them concrete, well, they got alcohol in the breath, they can't refuse. Bullshit. Yes, they can. There's case law that says it. But not only that, you know better. I mean, you know, if you've been drunk and you're kind of stumbling around, you go home and work on your electrical socket. You know, you knew when her ass was fat and ugly. I shouldn't have said it. You know what I mean? But you shouldn't have went there with whatever. But you did it because but you still knew. You know. I mean,
and you know how to like call someone to give you a ride home or call a cab or whatever, right? You know, I mean.
So I know you're busy. I'm sorry, Doctor.
Yeah, I just have to go. So I have to pick my kid up.
Hey, thank you. I'll send it to you.
All right. Well, I'll have some follow up soon. Okay. And I'll check this thing out, how the transcript thing works. I've never used that before.
Yep. It'll come through it'll be a YouTube link that's totally unlisted. So the only people that have the link are you and me. That's it.
Okay. Perfect. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.